All right. Well, next up, we have a treat. Not to say that everyone else hasn't been a treat already, but I think it's really exciting when you have a really large enterprise brand be able to share their experiences so that the rest of us can learn. And in fact, it's a special treat because a lot of times people aren't always allowed to talk about the things that they do internally to some of these brands. So we have the road to digital fit with Gap coming up next. So we've got Roux, and I'm going to go with her full title, which I don't know how you have time in the day, Roz, because this is a very long title. Senior Director, Technical Design, Digital Product Creation, Product Integrity, and Footwear. So I had to take a deep breath before I started out on that one. Welcome. We've got Bernard, and correct me if I get your name wrong, Bernard, but Bernard Grenier, is that right? Oh, you're on mute, Bernard. And there's probably a little button down at the bottom of your screen that says mute. There you go. We still can't hear you.
How about now?
Yes, there we go.
It's Grenier, thanks.
Grenier, fantastic. All right, fantastic. And Director, GIS Digital Product Creation. And GIS stands for?
Global International Sourcing.
Oh,
so we're the sourcing arm for Gap Inc.
So doesn't sound like you have any time in your day either, I would imagine.
in the long days that start at 7 a.m. and end at midnight, no, not a lot of time in the day.
Fantastic. And we also have AC Polet, who's the founder and head of Stitch. I think she might be joining us in a little bit. Is that correct toward the end? I'll check with the higher ups. I think that, oh, there she is. There she is. Hello, AC. Good to see you.
Hey, nice to see you too.
Yeah, fantastic. So I'll let you all start off. First of all, I would say I'm just super excited about this particular session because, again, I know you all from a number of different areas. And it's like I said, this is really exciting to hear about what Gap has been doing. So I'll let you take it.
So good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the globe. I'm Rozh. So Joshua introduced me as the Senior Director of GIS, which is Gap International Sourcing. And I am actually starting on Monday, I'm transitioning to one of our brands at Letter. So welcome everyone. I've spent probably the last 25 plus years honing my skills as a fit expert. And now I'm taking those skills over the last sort of 6 years and really developing them into a digital fit process. Over to you, Bernard.
Hello, everyone. Bernard Grenier. I'm the Director of Digital Product Creation for GIS. I have the luxury of working with all 4 brands for vendor-facing practices, and I also lead the fabric digitization team. It's been a very exciting stretch to create that fabric digitization team from scratch a year ago and to see where they've come in all this time. So let's start. First big question, are you in? You're likely in 3D and you're thinking about expanding your scope and moving into digital fit. That's exactly what we're here to talk about today. If I can briefly mention that, we have 4 brands at Gap Inc., all of them at different phases and different levels of scaling DPC. From a very granular effort that's led by TD to a robust brand effort that includes almost all product categories. So there's a lot to go with there. We utilize 2 tools at Gap Inc., Browseware and Clo, but I'll tell you for the sake of this presentation today, we're only going to use one. We have 15 minutes and that only allots for 1 tool.
So let's talk through the benefits. So really, the first benefit I would say, most importantly, is understanding how fabric translates into a silhouette and then hangs on the body. So that's a huge advantage to be able to see, how that really works in 3D. And I think really the beauty of being able to turn, the model and understand style lines. So not just in 2D. So if you look at an illustrator's sketch, you would look at the front view and then the back view, but you wouldn't necessarily understand how a neckline contours the body from the front through a side view to the back. Or if you were building performance wear, understanding the style lines and how those lines, again, form on the body, and really getting to hone in on that. And then, of course, the last thing we want to talk about today is really how we shorten the timeline through digital fit. And then some of the obstacles, probably the biggest misnomer in 3D is that it's not a drawing tool. And it really requires, I think, the techs that I've worked with that have the best expertise in this are those that have pattern making, really strong pattern making skills, because that's what you really need in order to do digital fit. And so, the steep learning curve, of course, is a challenge for many of us, and I would say everybody going in. One has to really invest a lot of time. You have to have patience and a huge amount of passion. And then it's got to be a consistent practice to really get over that hump, and then get into really developing your skill set in the tool. And change management is that presents another challenge. One has to really train the eye to understand how does something look in digital fit, and then you have to learn to fit in a different medium. It's a completely different medium, so all workable. So I think digital fit really is the closest thing to a live fitting. You've got your avatar, which represents your mannequin, and your mannequin should really be a good representation of your live fit model. And then critical to the success of a digital fit is the accuracy of your digitized fabric. So really, and there's many different levels of that, but when you get the texture and the physics to be very accurate to the physical is when you can start to understand the drape and the stretchability of the fabrics. And then, this enables you to make accurate fit decisions and, build confidence in the digital fit process.
So let's take a look at the product development pipeline briefly. We're going to concentrate just on the digital fit area. That's defined by the kind of 3D samples that we work with, 3D proto samples, 3D line adoption samples. We'll be focusing more on 3D fit samples and 3D size sets, and then 3D TOP samples. Now, if we've gone 100% digital for 3D proto and 3D line adoption, we have a time savings of 6 to 12 weeks in the product development pipeline. So we're going to build on that by going into our 8-week period for digital fit, which culminates with the completion of a 3D TOP sample. But we're going to break it down even more. We'll talk about 3D size sets, but we're going to spend most of our time talking about the 3D fit cycle that lasts 8 weeks. Last year, Rozh and I participated in 3D Tech Fest. We talked about all of the foundational tools that we had built to supply our vendors with. At Gap Inc., our vendors are currently supplying us with 100% of our assets. They're building absolutely everything that we require from them when we require 3D protos, 3D line adoption samples, and we'll be stepping into 3D fit. We're already requesting a great number of 3D TOP samples. So our vendors are really ready with this. We were very fortunate to have a great vendor base who adopted all of our digital standards quite readily.
So with the foundational tools, we really need to educate our vendors to understand those, and then align the vendors and our teams. And so once everybody is in sync, you really you want to create like an orchestra, right? You want this harmonious kind of flow back and forth between the vendors and the cross-functional teams to really start to use 3D to execute digital fit. And then our avatars represent our mannequins in the different size ranges, which are as close as we can get, mostly from our fit models. So we use those to develop the fit in a digital format. And the blocks really establish the fit and balance of a brand fit. And then, through using the blocks, you can get a fit consistency with rise shapes and armhole shapes, and use that to really drive a level of consistency across a vendor base. And this is important when your vendor base is really large.
As I also mentioned, I lead the fabric digitization team that's seated in Hong Kong. And for the past year, I can tell you that we've gone through very extensive parallel testing, confirming many common practices with industry partners, and also building standard procedures for fabric digitization. Currently, the team is focused on accrediting vertical vendors to digitize fabrics directly for the brands. And our fabric library numbers just about 1,000 fabrics at this point. 6 months from now, we'll have 7,000 fabrics in the library. So we're scaling very quickly, and it's all led by this fabric digitization team, which supply this very critical foundational tool for digital fit.
So the fit camps really define the fit, and it alleviates this inconsistency between what a merchandiser or a designer or a tech designer understands as a skinny fit or a wide leg fit. And so we build those as guardrails to really ensure that there's fit consistency. And then, training the vendors on those same fit camps ensures that across the entire cross-functional teams, we have a level of fit consistency. And then we use the length guides, for sleeve lengths or our top lengths or skirts and dresses, even bottoms, to really to create a consistency in the language of what we call different lengths. And those then can be used all the way through to the customer, so that a customer understands when they come into a brand, they are purchasing something on a continual basis. Maybe they like a 7/8 length, or they can consistently buy that same length, no matter what the fabric is.
So,
and
Rozh,
then of course we use placement guides, for example, waist placements, again to create that synergy across all the departments, and then all the way through to our customer, so that they are already clear on what those fits are.
So, Rozh, what's the realistic approach to digital fit? What are we really looking at?
So, the same foundational tools in physical and digital is what we build. And then that provides clarity and consistency to reduce the number of physical fits. And that's really the goal here.
So here's the big question. Are we really trying to eliminate all physical samples? And I'll give you the answer. The answer is both yes and no. I'll start with no first. When you start working in digital fit, it's something that scales very slowly. You're bringing on a TD team who's changing the way they work and changing the way they see. So it's very important for them to scale slowly. Eventually, after you've built trust in the digital sample, that's when you can decide whether or not you're eliminating more and more physical samples. And in some cases, you'll be able to eliminate all samples. What we're really talking about here is the language of digital fit. This is a common language that you establish between your pattern maker, your vendor, your TD teams, so that you learn how to look at digital samples exactly the same way, seeing the same things at the same time. That's the way you sort of scale into it and accelerate it. It's very important to have those standards in place. Let's start with some examples of how you can look at these 3D samples. I'll start with parallel fit, which I think is the most important. Whenever you're thinking of stepping into 3D fit, parallel fit eases your team into looking at digital samples the same way that they're looking at physical samples. It's important to see them. It's important to see the fit issues. It's important to see what the vendor is seeing. Only after you get through this parallel testing period of time can you even think about eliminating a physical sample. It all comes down to that sense of trust. Do you really feel you can trust that digital sample? Is that digital sample representing everything you need to see so that you can eliminate the use of multiple physical samples?
So one of the tools that I love in 3D is the ease of a body and just the transparency and just understanding where a style line is perhaps hitting on an armhole or a rise, understanding the ease of the body. And so without having that feedback from a fit model, one really needs to start to understand the fit and the shape and the volume. And transparency is that tool that can provide a lot of that information.
One of the tools that I really like is being able to superimpose the pattern pieces onto your garment. And to be able to double check that your block has been used. So in this case here, we have a block for our slim fit tee. I can see that the shoulder slope matches, the armhole matches, the sleeve cap matches, the across chest matches. So it's easy for me to deduce that the fit for this garment will be very much like the block. And that works for me. Another example here is for these bottoms. I can superimpose the pattern pieces. And from looking at these pattern pieces, I'm not sure if it shows up on the Zoom, but I can see that the patterns don't necessarily align. That's a red flag for a TD, so that you can point out to your pattern maker or to your vendor that these don't align and you might need to see a physical sample at this point. Another thing that you need to use is identifying visible fit issues. In this case here, at the front empire waistline and at the lower back waist, there's buckling at the seam. I hope it's easy to see in this Zoom, but it's pretty clear when you look at it in the 3D window. All of this can be corrected by adjusting your patterns until you get a better fit. This is something that if you have more pattern making skills, you're more adept at, but it's also an acquired skill with time.
So the cross section enables the opportunity to get a viewpoint that you would never be able to see on a live fit model. And so really, understanding the shape of a rise, for example, the balance of the leg, and just, looking at it from this viewpoint is a really interesting piece to the fit process, where it removes the subjectivity of a fit model's feedback. So I've often found in my years of fitting that, some fit models will feel a rise is tight the one day and the next day it won't feel tight. It'll be exactly the same fit. So, this enables you to really set that consistency once you've trained your eye, and just not, to build in your fit consistency, but to be able to see it through different fabrics using, the same block. And so that's a huge advantage to really building the confidence in the digital fit process. So 4D Fit is really in its infancy. There's a couple of innovation studios that are starting to work in 4D Fit. And I'm looking forward to this being, really breakthrough of when you can start to get movement, to really understand fit. When we're fitting with a live fit model, we would maybe have them, raise their arms or move their arms in performance wear. You would, maybe have them doing some squatting or crowd, yoga poses, depending on what types of product you're developing. And so really understanding, how the style, how the fit is, reacting with the movement of body is really key in fitting in digital. So more to come and lots more development on that piece. And then the other thing that's it's a really great tool is the pressure maps, and especially with any form fitting like bras and intimates and any really fitted leggings, one can really start to understand compression through the fabric, and how it's fitting on the body, and really start to build in your different fits based on that, or increasing your spec measurement so that you release some of that compression.
One of the other tools that harkens back to your avatar size set, utilizing a size set to analyze fit is also something that you have the luxury of doing in a short amount of time without the creation of additional physical samples. You're able to analyze the fit on a variety of sizes that let the TD identify possible grading issues and fit issues. Also, if you're looking at placement prints or prints on a variety of sizes, you're still in that bulk fit process, and it gives you the opportunity to make changes accordingly, depending on if you feel you need to scale that print or scale that placement print.
So Bernard, do I really need a physical sample?
Roz, I am so glad you asked that question. In some cases, you don't need a physical sample, and here are some of the reasons. Is your garment fit approved in a previous season? You don't need a physical sample. You can work with a 3D sample. If it's a block-based style that aligns with the block, then you can also work with a 3D sample. Also, if the fit is exactly the same as a fit-approved style, you also have the luxury of working with a fit sample. Now, when we talk about working with a physical sample, that's a very different story. Maybe there's a different fabrication. In that case, you need to order a physical sample. Maybe you're revising the style and altering the fit. There too, you need a physical sample. But if you're revising that style and it does not alter fit, you can work with the 3D sample. Also, you have the luxury in 3D of confirming your changes in the 3D tool, utilizing a 3D fit. Ultimately, you get down to a physical fit sample on a fit model. If you haven't ordered a physical sample yet, you have that final opportunity to order a physical sample and check it out on a fit model. That is the trail for and decision tree for whether or not you should order a physical sample or a 3D sample. So we've talked about time savings in this timeline. And if we look at our 3D proto samples and our 3D line adoption samples, we've managed a savings of 6 to 12 weeks in the product development pipeline. What we've concentrated on in this chat is 3D fit samples and 3D size samples. And by the use of those samples, that we're also able to save 2 to 4 more weeks to add to that stack of 6 to 12 weeks that we've saved from 3D proto and 3D line adoption samples. And that gives us a total savings of up to 16 weeks in a product development pipeline. Who couldn't use 16 extra weeks in your product development pipeline? As we said, if the 3D fits, wear it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Wow. If the 3D fits, wear it. I love it. Joshua introduced me quickly. My name is Anne-Christine. I'm the founder of Stitch. We build software for fashion brands, including digital showrooms, but we also have a 3D arm. And from that angle, I'm here to ask our lovely presenters a couple of questions. Because we're both in the industry. So my first question, and Roz, this is really for you, because in the beginning of your presentation, you were talking a lot about, what might be some of the hurdles that you come across. And what we experience in our work at Stitch is that it's as much about the technology as it is a lot about people. And that is, how do you educate people? How do you train people? But also, how do you work with mindsets? So I'm really curious, because you mentioned mindset, what are some of the best practices that you've developed along the way, and training people's eyes, getting them on board? What have you tried, and what really has worked?
Sorry, I lost you there for a minute. So I think, making sure that everybody's really comfortable with failure, right? So we're such a culture of perfection. And I think, that's really what we need to, allow the space and the time for people to learn, and then understand that we're moving towards something versus we're there and it's, very much ticked and tied. So I think just, supporting that journey and understanding that different teams are moving at different rates. I think that's an important piece of the whole transition and the change management.
I see. And another, something else that we come across a lot, and I'm sure that you've tackled this as well, is when we work with brands, especially here in Europe, we see a tendency that brands try to retrofit a 3D process into a 2D one, which leads not just to complexity, but also to lack of motivation, and just doesn't work, and it just doesn't fit. So how do you go about the process conundrum, and how are you tackling that?
And when you talk about the process conundrum, it's important to note that you should never try to retrofit a 3D workflow over your physical sample workflow. By doing that, you're cutting yourself off. You're not getting the agility that you would get delivered in a 3D workflow, and you're actually adding a layer of work onto your physical sample workflow. A better approach to it is to substitute 3D workflows for current physical workflows. I wouldn't recommend doing that all at once. Find the gaps in your workflows where there are solutions offered by the 3D tool and start there. You can always scale from that point when you start small. Also, if you start big, there's no way that you're going to, get the change management piece in there. You've got to convince all of these team members all at one time to do this brand new thing in a whole new way. So if you start small, really sort of attacking your pain points with the 3D tool, I think you have more of a chance of success.
I hear a lot of similarities in playbooks. I feel like we might be running the same one too. So one of the things that we come across when we do this, even if you start small and when you're kind of separating the processes out, is time. And you guys mentioned incredible time saves already. My first question is, I'm sure there's other brands watching out there that are thinking, oh Lord, I'm not there yet. How can we even aspire to this? So what's the real talk? Where are you? Let's do that one first. That's my first question.
Let me tell you about two brands. I won't name them. We work with 4 brands, but there are different approaches here with our different brands. We're not all at that point that is the end story. We're really sort of beginning our journey, but Gap Inc. has stepped into 3D technology in a really big way. I'll tell you that. And there are 2 different approaches with the 2 brands that I have in mind. One has been a slower, granular process that has been ongoing for a significant amount of time that has allowed them to build on their learnings and to scale in a really good way. Another brand has decided to map everything out very clearly. Every step of the way mapped out, each breath, each step, and course correcting as they move along. Both of those ways are very viable approaches to stepping in. And if I can tell you where we are as an enterprise model, I think we're doing well. I don't know of any other brand that has jumped in as quickly as we have. And that's really because we have a very reliable vendor base who has been in the industry for 10 to 15 years. So relying on that vendor base allows you to jump in a lot faster.
Yeah, that gives it also gives some speed, I can imagine, when you have a solid vendor base in place like that. So talking about speed, you mentioned a lot of time saves. Something that we also come across is that you do need to train. You need to get all your disciplines on board. And, most fashion brands don't really have time in their calendars to be able to do these things. So how have you been able to tackle that and navigate that, and how are you giving time back? And my follow-up question to that already is, does that not clash with the time saved that you're aspiring to?
think we're definitely we're in that process right now, and it is a challenge. It's the biggest challenge, right? So as Bernard had mentioned, we've got vendors that are very advanced in the process, and we've now onboarded them into our digital product standards, but we need to bring the brands along. And so that's a big piece of the work that's happening now. And I think it's more about the small, trying to take little pods, and moving and training, pods, cross-functional pods into the tool. I think it always starts better with those that are hungry to learn. And I think we're just a culture of FOMO, right? So if you can get a little part of people in and get some excitement, and some energy around that, and then people start to get fascinated and curious, and that's kind of how you drive this process forward. And I think there's a healthy sort of dynamic going on between our brands. We all meet cross-functionally with with our hub office, the team Bernard and I have been on, and really just aligning and talking and sharing ideas. And I think we're about to really launch into this, but it's slow. It's certainly slow. We're not seeing time savings from a work perspective yet.
Yeah.
If I can add on to that, it's not about winning this big DPC implementation battle. It's really about a long line of successful skirmishes, of having small wins, and more importantly, tracking them all, tracking every KPI, every digital sample, every physical sample you save, every minute you save. You've got to track all of that, because that's when you see your successes, when you can look back at all of those little skirmishes that you won along the way, and you feel like you're not doing really well, you're not all in like everybody else. You really get to see what you've done if you can track every bit of it.
That's true. And I think that tracking will probably also be really important when you're needing to justify the time investment, the people investment. What we're seeing on the European side is that, especially now, and potentially people are projecting in the next couple of months, there's a bit of a slowdown in 3D. And that is probably one of the primary reasons, is that the ROI is not immediate. It's many skirmishes together, and that all forms, it becomes part of a longer term plan to really change the way that you work and change your value chain in that sense. I'm really curious what you guys are noticing on your end, on your side of the ocean, and how you're tackling maybe some of the tough questions you might be getting from the people upstairs on, like, can I see some data, or what are the wins?
Because of the timing of our implementation and how we've gone in so quickly and so big, it really is a different story than what you're seeing in Europe. They've just begun knocking on the door of KPIs and numbers and ROIs from a higher level. We've been actively in utilizing 3D workflows with the new tool selection for probably 18 to 20 months. That's how long we've been working there. But leadership is now starting to ask those questions. I do want to raise a red flag here. When leadership talks about digital product creation, usually they're looking at just numbers. They don't have any sort of in-touch experience with the granular feel of digital product creation. They're looking at numbers: how many samples, how many fabrics, how many vendors. All those numbers add up to something. But what does it really mean? What I've noticed in a lot of those upper level management meetings is there are no granular 3D users, no digital natives in the room who can translate those numbers into reality. So I think it's important to include your digital natives in the conversation with senior leadership, so they understand what's behind those KPIs. What do those numbers really mean, and what can they project forward?
Wow, if there's one thing that people watching should take away from this, it's what you just said, Bernard, because it's so true. Because in the end, you shouldn't just look at it from an Excel file. This has much longer implications and the impact for real incredible change. Only if you just look at the weeks of time savings that you guys just presented. But and then your sustainability angles, etc. So thank you for that. It's nice, it's a bit of hope and some really good advice. Before we close off, I'm really curious, what's next for you guys? You tackled fit, or you're tackling fit. Like, what's on the horizon? Where are you going?
Yeah, we like to think of this journey as maybe like a two-pronged fork, where on the bottom prong we're exploring down into the digital fit piece. So that entails working with the vendors, tech design, and really developing a digital process to get to fit approval. And then if you think about the top arm of the fork, there's where we start to get into virtual showrooms. We could be doing A/B testing, AI and content out on our websites. How do we use these digital assets along that road, which is very different. I mean, even it's undiscovered at this point, right? That's where it sort of goes off into infinity. We haven't we know there's NFTs out there. I mean, it just goes on. And so I think it's there's so much more to come, but we can sort of see we see where we're going right now, and we're moving along both prongs of the fork, because that's an important piece of it, right? We like to talk about it as the Industrial Revolution 2.0. So we're on that journey. Let's go.
Right, absolutely. I love it. And also what you say, the two prong, the two split offs of that fork, they can be done completely simultaneously when you're working digitally. So again, the potential for time save, let alone the complete innovation that you can be doing, is incredible. So thank you. I'm really happy that I got to ask you these questions. I really enjoyed your presentation, so thank you so much for that. I hope everyone listening has learned a lot from that and took good notes. Take those things away. Start small. Bring your ambassadors. Bring your digital natives up into that boardroom. Have them really show what 3D and digital design is all about. Thank you. I think that's it. And Josh is back.
Thank you, AC.
I'm back. That was really wonderful. I love the discussion, and it's really great to get those I think critical details on how you're building this capability at Gap and within all of the brands as well. So thank you. And AC, we didn't get to really talk much about on your end about what's next for you and then Stitch.
Yeah, we've got some exciting things going on, but things will become very clear in the next couple of months.
Okay, great. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all once again. We really appreciate your time tonight, and I think what you guys went through, and in fact, Bernard, you made a great segue to our next presenter, who's going to be actually Rozh. It was you that made that great segue of how do you take that capability that you build within digital product creation, of digital prototyping, digital sampling, and then bring it into the larger enterprise, into the A/B testing, into the decision making, into the e-commerce. So that's where we're going next. So and it sounds like that's where Gap is going next at some point as well. So exciting stuff. Great. Thank you all.